Welcome to Being Ahead of the Airplane by me, Marco Johnston. So, there I was, driving over to Howell Livingston County Airport in Michigan for a cross-country solo flight. It was a regular summer day with a good forecast and no issues with the plane. I was feeling great and decided to complete a lesson. So, I headed out to the plane, did my pre-flight to make sure the plane was good to go, got in, did my checklist, yelled, "Clear prop!" and cranked that Lycoming engine to life. I proceeded to run my checklist and taxied to the runway, did my run-up, and the engines looked good. So I took off and headed to Saginaw, a small city about 50 nautical miles north of Howell. From there, I got to cruise and ran my checklist, which prompted me to turn off my electronic fuel pump and let the engine-driven fuel pump feed the engine with fuel. After about 20 minutes closer to Saginaw, I see something that would make most people crap their pants. Fuel flow low, illuminated on my screen. But this was the kind of stuff I trained for. So I ran my ABCs: airspeed, best place to land, and checklist. The first two weren't very important as I was in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, with fields everywhere. And I didn't need to glide anywhere. So I moved on to the checklist, where I located the checklist items I needed to do to solve this issue, which had only the fuel pump on it, and if it doesn't go away, land as soon as possible. So I flipped the fuel pump on, and poof, it disappeared. But since I'm always ahead of the airplane, on the way back from Saginaw, I decided to fly at 7,500 feet instead of 3,500 feet above the ground, so I can ensure if for whatever reason I lost that engine, I would be in glide distance to an airport. If I didn't make that decision to get ahead of the airplane and things went south, I probably would have ended up in a field, which would not have been fun. In flying, everything you do needs to be logical and in sequence. That's why we have checklists. You follow it in order, and you'll be safe. For example, before we got in the plane, we have the PAVE checklist. It consists of pilot, aircraft, environment, and external pressures. Pilot ensures you're feeling good and legal to fly. Aircraft ensures that the plane is safe and legal to fly, and you feel comfortable with the environment. Feel comfortable with it. Environment ensures that you're comfortable with the place you're flying to. The weather, the performance of your aircraft is going to work, and the performance of your aircraft is going to work out. And lastly, external pressures. In flying, you can have things pressure you very easily. The most talked about is escaping the weather, also known as get-there-itis. But decision making doesn't just happen in the plane. It happens everywhere. Life loves to throw curveballs every once in a while, and you gotta be ready for it. For example, my cousin had unprotected sex as a teen and ended up with a kid. Completely changed the course of his life in one night. He was gonna go to college, get a degree, and probably a good job, but he ended up spiraling down a bad decision hole, got into drugs, had another kid, and now he's way behind in life. Decision making is just that difference between. And that's kind of my point creating this podcast. It's to help others realize they need to get ahead of the airplane. This led to me interviewing a cool guy named Nicholas Lorenzo, also known as my roommate. He's an instrument-rated pilot with 250 hours of flight time, and he's currently trying to get his commercial rating. And I asked him a bunch of questions about decision making, as I know he's been through a bunch of stuff in his life and has a lot of flight time in the plane. For example, one of the questions I asked him was what was the hardest decision he's had to make while flying? And he said,
probably when my engine quit on my first solo and where to land.
That's a good one.
For more context, on his first solo, he took off and lost the engine right after takeoff and had to put the plane in a riverbed. So it's safe to say he knows a thing or two about decision making. And on top of that, he's seen someone drink and fly and lose all of their pilots' ratings they worked for. This is like 40 to 60 grand and a lot of time taken away. So I asked him how he plans ahead so he doesn't make poor decisions. And he said,
Starts with sleep,
Sleep, that's a good one.
and then what we're eating, and making sure we know everything about the flight.
Yeah.
this highlights that your physical shape is very important when it comes to decision making, as if you're tired or hungry, you'll tend to make bad decisions, not only in the plane, but in real life too. Then I moved on to ask him if there were any instances he witnessed that would prevent him from doing anything like that. And he said,
Probably drinking and flying would be a big one. Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah.
And probably fly an airplane that shouldn't be flown.
Yeah.
We'll never do that.
this goes into highlighting the fact that you should learn from others so you don't have to make their mistakes. Next, I interviewed my older brother. He's an airline pilot who's a captain for SkyWest, and he has his type rating in the Embraer ERJ 170. And I interviewed him recently as I knew he would have tons of experience to bring to the table. First off, I asked him what the hardest decision he had to make while flying was, and it was when he had a parking brake failure mid-flight on his first time sitting in the captain's seat with someone who's supposed to be testing him in the right seat and making sure he was up to standards. And he essentially had to make a bunch of decisions regarding who's going to fly and how he was going to calculate the risk, and it added up to a lot quickly. And luckily nothing ended up happening because of it, and he did everything right, and now he's a captain. Then I asked him the fun question I asked Nick Lorenzo, which was the craziest decision making he had witnessed from other people flying. And he said the time when he saw a general aviation aircraft from CAE, a Part 61 flight school, fly directly into a thunderstorm cell at Falcon Field Airport at sunset, which is just insane. First off, thunderstorms have horrible visibility, severe turbulence, and possibly hail that can all lead to a disaster. But luckily they managed to survive it. But moving on from that, I wanted to ask him some more questions about his life. And so I asked him how he plans ahead. And he said,
it's as simple as this. You got to have self-respect, number one. To take care of yourself, you need to have self-respect. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Everything that I do, I have to think about fully and plan for it. I mean, it's just even small things, right? Like if I'm going to go to the gym, how am I going to prepare myself with the right food, with the right sleep, with the right mentality? How am I going to, do caffeine or whatever? How am I going to fuel myself for that? And it's about mentally preparing for that every time.
Everything he does has to be planned out beforehand, even small things. And then I asked him what he wishes he could go back and redo to fix a mistake he's made in the past. And he explained how he doesn't want any mistake he's made in the past to change, as they've all shaped him into the person he is today. Every mistake he's made, he learned a valuable lesson from, and he appreciates them and respects them, which I thought was a great point. You should always look at a mistake as a learning point. So, once again, the biggest thing you should take away from this podcast is to always remain ahead of the airplane. Or in other words, make checklists of things to do, learn from other people's mistakes, and don't get yourself into any crazy situations. But if you do, make sure to analyze what went wrong and learn from it. And keep going. It's not the end of the world if you end up making a big mistake. For example, my cousin is still living pretty well off, even though he didn't go to college, and he's just behind those who did. Thanks for listening.